technical difficulties. Okay, we've started the recording. And as I was saying, I'm Victoria Compton from the San Juan County Economic Development Council. We're a private nonprofit that exists solely to serve small businesses in San Juan County. So whatever your business needs, you call us, you email us, we can help you with whatever you need. And we've got Jamie Stevens today on the phone, I believe, or possibly in person, who's going to be telling us about the programs and situation at the county level. And then we'll open up the conversation to John Gomez from the EDC staff. He's our lead on unemployment, and he'll talk about how business owners can now apply for unemployment. And then we'll open up for questions and answers. We also have Chris Reed, our SCORE volunteer for San Juan County, who has a vast array of knowledge about the various programs on the federal level and the state level. So without further ado, I'm gonna hand the baton over to Jamie Stevenson, County Council member from Lopez Island. Jamie, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely.
So anyway, I don't have a lot because Victoria's been doing such a good job on pushing out information to our business owners and the business community in general. I'll try to offer what I know, but it might just be a repeat. Anyway, some of the things we're doing on a county level as far as businesses is trying to push our government leaders, particularly in the governor's office, on what the plan is for coming out, even though, as he said yesterday, it's going to be a dial, not a switch. And I think really we need, as the local leaders, we need to know what that dial looks like and a little more certainty going into May 4th. I feel, well, in talking to people, and I feel like there's a lot of anxiety over that May 4th date and what's going to happen. On the other side of that, I was on a call Sunday with the governor's office, and they presented a lot of data, and that data led me to believe, and I was on another call yesterday and led others to believe, that it was all there to set the table for extending past May 4th. So I fully expect an extension of the orders, but where the gray area is there might be a little bit of opening up, such as for recreation, golf courses, and perhaps what I feel locally and across the state, perhaps construction, particularly on single family residences. I hope I don't hurt anybody's feelings, but it seems odd that, and I'm fully supportive of Opal's project on Orcas. Don't get me wrong, we put a lot of money towards it. But it seems odd that we can have contractors coming from off island to work on that project, or even the county can work on its projects while the rest of our contractors have to sit on their hands and not do things. So we've been pushing hard for that. The other thing we've been working on with our federal representatives is the PPP program, the Paycheck Protection Program. And I would be interested at some point in this, Victoria, if you could poll people. To my knowledge, I mean, I had it confirmed through the National Association of Counties that the big banks pushed out the money, and they pushed out the money to the biggest loans. I don't know of anybody in our county who's gotten any funding of any sort other than maybe their stimulus check. And we're pushing hard to get that down to our smaller businesses. Particularly well, the program that was passed yesterday is supposed to be doing that, but I'll wait to be seen. And if anybody has received any of these programs, it would kind of be great just to know the facts, what bank it went through, how many employees you have. I don't even need to know the amount.
Do you want me to blurt a little bit about that?
Sure.
We're also that the mainland banks didn't do anything in San Juan County, but the local banks really rocked it. So Heritage Bank actually pushed through all of their loan applications, all of the ones that had all their records and ducks in a row. Banner Bank did some, WAFed did some, but really our local banks are to be commended here.
Do you know how many they actually?
I don't. I can ask them though.
That would be great to know. Thank you, Victoria.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's see. The other thing that's been great, and I think we're all trying to do this, whether you're a business or the county government, is our local organizations, safety net organizations, have really come up with some innovative ways, I think, to keep money in the community and help do what they want to do, which is keep people in their houses, keep people fed, and provide some mental health to keep everyone sane. And they've turned out to be kind of an economic engine. When the food, I'm not sure on San Juan Island, but on Orcas and Lopez, when food was running short and also safety concerns about food banks, people transitioned into meal deliveries, and that's for both our seniors and Family Resource Center clients. But in order to do that and help others, they're actually, instead of, and the stores weren't able to provide as much food to the food banks anyway. So they've gone to delivering meals, which are purchased from the local restaurants. And the local restaurants in turn are purchasing as much produce and other goods as they can from the local farmers. And now we've taken a step further in contracting with the farmers for the summer, because this is going to be a 4 or 5 month dilemma for everybody in the time when we make all our money. So it's kind of a circle. It's keeping the money in the community. They're using those donations. It's accomplishing the purpose of keeping people in their house, giving the restaurants and farmers some amount of income. So I think that's really commendable, and that's my update.
That's fantastic, Jamie. Do we have any questions for Jamie?
Jamie, this is Chris Reed. On the list of early opening activities, do you believe that recreational boating and fishing will be on that, and or are we advocating that to the state?
That hasn't been on top of the list, but I'll see what I can find out. I don't know. That one would probably make sense. The governor and his, I don't know if anybody saw it yesterday, just said some forms of recreation. So again, it's kind of another gray area for us.
Absolutely. I'm trying to see if anybody's got their hand up, because
not a question, but a comment.
Oh, Steve Hushbeck.
The town council last week pretty unanimously endorsed the phase 1 construction restart with COVID-19, site requirements and so forth. But we were going to try and get a read on where the county was with that, and it sounds like they're on board as well. And the town council had to study and review the guidelines for job site requirements, which we got a few days ago, and we're going to vote on that tomorrow as a town.
Great. I know that part of the holdup has been the Builders Association and the labor unions trying to negotiate what the best practices, and that was delivered to the governor last week.
So there's a couple of questions I see in chat. Apparently I'm not seeing everybody on the list, so I can't see some people who might have their hands up, but there was a note that said Laura Sazio had her hand up, and there was a question from Lance Evans. So you guys can unmute yourselves to ask your questions if you like.
Go ahead, Laura.
Hi. I had heard, I was not able to listen to the county council meeting yesterday, but I was told that there were some talk about when travel reopens. And again, for people who don't know, I own Earthbox and Bird Rock Hotel and sit on the Visitors Bureau board. But there's some talk that when travel does reopen, what might that look like, and what kind of restrictions might the county lift? And I know that's, we really don't know when that might happen, but there was just a little bit of scuttlebutt going around yesterday in the lodging community that it might open up for vacation rentals, but maybe not hotels. And I just wanted to throw that out, that when it does come time to open and loosen up, our staff has talked, in great detail about how we might do reopening in a very safe and protected way, especially given, you know, at our property and some other properties where we have all exterior corridors and self-contained, you know, no shared breathing air and that kind of thing, and offering complete remote check-in. So it's just a comment that I have that, you know, I certainly would like to have a conversation about that if that's part of that, you know, when that comes part of the conversation.
Thank you, Laura. We're trying to, the conversation yesterday was expressing the exact frustration you're just saying, that people are looking at that date and getting anxious about reopening and what's going to reopen. And I think where the council was going with this is we need to start developing those plans. So as they do reopen, there's guidelines, or it sounds like you're already looking at some, but at least from the health officer. I haven't heard any of the scuttlebutt on hotels versus vacation rentals, but just to me, that seems upside down, because it seems like you would open the hotels where there's a lot more control and training of staff, et cetera, and some of the things you just mentioned before you'd open up vacation rentals.
Thank you.
Lance, did you have something?
Just a quick question or follow-up to your comment about sort of social services on the different islands. I just didn't know, I know on Orcas, there is a daily outreach delivery of lunch and perhaps dinner to as many children who sign up for it. I didn't know if that's if other islands are doing a similar project.
Well, there are a similar project. In fact, I know the group here has worked with the Orcas food groups and the food systems, and they're similar programs. I did get word that at least on Lopez, because we have over 50% free and reduced lunch, that there might be able to continue the lunch delivery service all summer. And so that would service the school kids for all summer.
That's fantastic. On San Juan Island, Lance, I know that they are doing the school lunch delivered by bus during the week. And then Rotary Club is spearheading something called, I think, 32 weekends or something. Is what they usually do during the summer to feed the kids on the weekends.
That's
but
great.
On San Juan, and I'm not sure about Orcas, what's going to happen during the summer, and that's a big question.
Yeah.
And Lance, this is Krista. I know on Lopez, the school's sending out breakfast and lunch to all the students under 18, regardless of free and reduced qualifications or not.
Yeah, so it sounds like each island is sort of following a model that works for them as best they can. Yeah.
Jamie, if I could ask another question. We're seeing some reports that this might stretch out 12 months, 18 months in some form. We have kind of a unique geography here with the ferries. Is there any talk about possibly, you have some kind of protocol by which we could have increased security by health inspections, just thermometer checks, whatever, at the ferries that would make us more of a, if you will, an island of safety that people could come to safely and keep commerce going?
The ferries have been the nicest thing, reluctant downright resistant to any of our suggestions on how to accomplish a program similar to what you're saying. We put out some signs that were basically saying, don't come. They put them on the ferries, which really didn't do any good when people are already on them, but saying, don't come. You should be aware before you get, and then they, anyway, that said, don't come, be aware, the stores are closed, lodgings closed, campgrounds are closed, kind of know before you go. And it took 2 weeks and a lot of phone calls to get them to put even that 8.5 by 11 poster on the ticket booths. But in their defense, they're also, the people who are taking tickets are not enforcement people. So we'd have to work something else out. But again, they have been pretty resistant to do anything but their job as a transportation organization.
There are a couple other questions and
Yes.
comments in the chat.
So there's one from Natalie Wilson who asked, how much grant money did our local EDC receive from Working Washington? So those were the Working Washington Business Emergency Grants through the Department of Commerce. It was through a fund that the governor had set aside basically for companies to retrain, and they changed it to a emergency grant for small businesses. The grants still haven't been decided, so we looked at all the applications and sent our recommendations to Commerce. They have the final say on all of them, but it's based on population. So our county is likely to receive somewhere in the $80,000 range for all of those applications. And we had, I think, 226 by the end of it. The state is thinking about putting more money into that pot. So we're hopeful that there will be more money spread around San Juan County through that mechanism. But if you have a connection with your state representative or state senators, definitely reach out to them and say how important it is for our community to get more Working Washington funding, because clearly it was a great gesture, but it's not enough to put even like a dent in the problem.
And there was also a note in the chat that Rick Hoffman had a comment. If Rick's on the line, you can unmute.
You need to unmute yourself, Rick.
There we go. You hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Different pot of money, but still could be important is the CARE Act. And they awarded $30,000 to Lopez Airport, and then San Juan and Orcas got over $1 million. That's federal money, but still important to the islands. It's encouraged to be spent locally, in some cases maybe to make up lost wages with, they had to lay people off. It wasn't the case at Lopez. I'm the sole employee and I'm part-time, so I'm still here. But we're planning on spending that money as local as possible. We're getting bids from local contractors to do some repairs and some tree removals and different projects that we've got going at Lopez. And we'll have several things on the agenda at our May 14th meeting, depending on if it's a conference call like last month or whatever, or a Zoom or whatever it happens to be. But I think between the 3 airports, you should see a little injection of money into the county.
Absolutely. Thanks, Rick.
See, Tara Anderson also has her hand up. So Tara, you could unmute yourself if you have a question.
Hi, yeah. Tara Anderson. I own the Barnacle in East Sound, and I am interested in if there's any initiative to identify how many people or how much money has come from the Small Business Association programs and grant programs in total to our community. Our business is one that applied for everything and anything early, and we have seen no relief so far. And we're hearing the same thing from our friends and neighbors in the industry. So it would be helpful to understand kind of what's expected. And I know that we have to be our own first responders, and that's kind of the island way anyway, is to be our own first responders. But we really, as far as small businesses, are leaning on outside sources and these SBA programs and these state grants, which are not making it, from what I can tell, to the people that need them in our local communities. So I would love to know if there's any initiative to have more direct support locally, and I'd also like to know if there's any initiatives to identify how much of that funding is actually making it here, because I'm not seeing it.
From our office, thanks, Tara, that's a great question. From our office, we're keeping track of the people that we talk to who have received PPP funds, and there are some in terms of that standpoint. From what I understand, and Chris, you might have different info on this, we have not seen any idle money come through yet. So I think it's just so early, and the second slice of federal funding should make a much bigger difference in smaller communities. for you personally and for anybody else on the call who has a mainland bank that they worked with, consider reaching out to a local bank because they really are the champions on this. They're opening up to non-customers and getting those federal funds into the hands of local businesses. And I hope that answered your question, Tara. Was there something that I missed? Because it was a great question.
I guess that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, so at this point, we're not tracking. As soon as the second slice comes through, we will be doing a better job tracking. At this point, everything is just kind of it's really basically a feeding frenzy, free-for-all kind of situation where they're rolling out new initiatives and changing the rules as they happen. But we'll know more in a couple weeks after we see how the second slice plays out. And actually, I'm going to reach out to you personally because you said you were working with other restaurants over on Orcas. So I'll call you later today to see if there's something else we can help you with.
But you were going to find out how much was doled out in the first
Yes, exactly. So that is part of it. So we'll have data from the banks, but that's only on the PPP program. We don't really have data on the EIDL. And I'm not sure that the feds have their stuff bolted together enough to give that to us, but we can reach out to them as well. Okay, any other questions?
This is Natalie here, and I just wanted to say a little update that I had originally applied with Islanders Bank, and I was on the list that I didn't even get an application. And then on Sunday, I got a contact from someone from Banner Bank that was working on the applications. I filled it out and she sent it up to the SBA. And now I know I'm at least in the process. So they are looking at my application. So it's finding a little bit of movement. I think they're doing it in anticipation of the money coming through anybody that was in the queue.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. And keep us posted on how that goes. Because if there's anything we can do to help, let us know.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, if there's no other questions for Jamie at this point, I'm gonna open up the conversation to John Gomez from our staff, who is our unemployment lead, to talk about how unemployment opened up to business owners, contractors, and gig workers. That's a huge change that happened on Sunday. And he can talk a little bit about that, about its retroactivity and all the nooks and crannies of that.
Hey, good morning. I'm John. I've been working in EDC now for about a month, and I've been tackling unemployment as it's been a very rapidly moving target. In the past few weeks, we've talked about workers, but this week, because of the switch to independent contractors and self-employed, of which most small business owners are going to fall into that category, I think we'll focus on that. And then if you have questions about workers, we can have a little Q&A at the end of this. A lot of you may have already seen the updates that have been coming in from ESD pretty quickly over the last few days since the system opened up on Sunday, the 19th, to independent contractors and self-employed. They're seeing an unprecedented amount of demand, as you can imagine. The key points that they want us to spread out in the community is that the more you're prepared before you apply, the smoother your process will be to get to the benefits. We've posted on our Facebook, and I've had many conversations with people. ESD has links, a lot of links, but the links for the self-employed are the ones that have all the checklists that you can drill down on and have all of your stuff available to you, at hand when you finally get through and can apply. What we've noticed is that the windows time out really quickly. So if you get in, you get your SAW account set up, you get into the system, and you've got to look something up, 20 seconds of idle time, and that system might back you out of there. Save your work as you go, because once you've got your SAW account set up, then you can go back in and you don't have to start over. The the system prompts you to go through all of the pages that you've already done, but you know, as long as you're active in the windows, you'll be fine. The first thing you can do is set up your SAW account. Those links are on esd.wa.gov. They've completely revamped the website if you haven't been there yet. So you don't have to dig very deep for anything anymore. It's all on the front page. And if you're self-employed, you can go right there. Yes?
Can you explain what a SAW account is?
Yeah, it's the secure access account. It's basically your user account. SAW stands for something. It's Secure Access Washington. Yeah, okay. And it's basically where you'll set up your name, your password, your username and password. Username has to be distinct. The password has to be, and I know this from experience, it has to have a capital letter, a small letter, a number, and a special character. And if you sit there and are trying to doodle it out on the system, oh, and it's got to be 10 characters long. So if you're sitting there trying to like figure it out and then wait for it, it'll dump you out. So the best thing to do is to come up with, you know, 3 or 4 things that you can type in as you're doing this, instead of like, you know, hanging on the window, because again, the window will idle out, you'll get bumped back, and then you'll have to hit, you know, refresh like 10 or 20 times to get back into the system. It's gotten better, but it used, in terms of being able to get into the system now, we noticed yesterday, but it's still very, you know, there's so many people hitting the system at any given time, day or night. I've heard that a lot of people are able to get in, you know, between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. Without any problem. Anybody here that's, you know, looking into that should be doing it. So, you know, one thing that's interesting, you know, if you are a small business owner and you're applying for unemployment, when you go in, you have the option of going in as an employer or as an employee. You are going in as an employee. Even though you own the business and you have employees, you're applying for unemployment. So you're going to be an employee of that business. And while independent contractors traditionally don't fit the unemployment definition of employee, this is nevertheless the route you have to take. If you go in as an employer, then you're just setting up to, you know, pay your benefit charges and that kind of stuff. And that's not where you want to be if you're applying for benefits. So I've talked to a couple of people who have gone down this rabbit hole and have had to call in. When you set up your SAW account, write down your password, take a screenshot of the whole thing. If it's not grayed out, I can't remember if you can see it or not, but, you know, make sure all this stuff is written down, because if you forget your password, you can recover it through your email. But if you forget what your username or email was that you used to get into it, then you're gonna have to call. So just try to document every step as you go. Hey, Jen J's got a question. Mickey, can you unmute?
So my business has a SAW account. To go in and file for unemployment, do I create a new SAW account for myself?
Yes, because you're going to be an employee of the business, so you'll do that. And that's a good question. Because this has been online now for 2.5 business days, we don't have any data yet on how, you know, what ESD is seeing in terms of how they're having to, you know, they came up with a plan of what kind of data they're going to need from small business owners, independent contractors. They are this week seeing what actually comes in and how people are navigating the website to get to the end of the process of just applying. I know that they, you know, if you are an independent contractor, then you should have your 2019 tax return, whatever you can give them to verify your income, because they're not going to be able to look into, you know, their system and verify your income because nobody paid in on your behalf. But the CARES Act supersedes that. That $600 pandemic payment, and there are there's like 5 different terms that they use for that, so I'll just call it the $600. That is, the unemployment system is the mechanism for delivery on that. Otherwise, they would just send everybody a check every, you know, once a week for $600 from the Fed, and we see how that's rolling out just with a stimulus check. So it's better that it's going this way. It also helps cut down on fraud, which I know we're going to probably start hearing about in a few weeks once people realize that, you know, some gamers are doing this across multiple states, and you know, it's going to be, it'll be an interesting story in about a month. But right now, what they're trying to do is make sure everybody gets paid. You should be able to get in this week. If you don't worry. You're still going to be eligible. The money's not going to run out. You'll still be able to backdate to when you, what they call separated from your employment, when you stopped working, when you stopped making money. With the CARES Act, that date, that's retroactive to the week ending April 4th. So it's also March 29th, but it's that week. So, and then the payments will go through, ESD says it's the week ending July 25th. So that's about, so if you go for the max, amount of time, so you're not going to work between March 29th and July 25th, and hopefully this is not the case. That's 17 weeks of, you know, $600 payments that you're eligible for as somebody who's never paid into unemployment before, or, you know, in recent times. So it's, you know, it is going to be a big help. It is also one of those things that's going to take probably a couple of weeks for ESD to sort out your application. You may get a phone call from them, or, you know, it won't say who it's from, but you'll get strange phone calls, and, you know, it'd be good to answer those calls, because if they leave you a message to call back, then you're going to be sitting on hold or, you know, trying to call back in for, you know, hours and hours at a time. And chances are, you know, independent contractors are going to have those conversations with ESD, just because they're going to get, you know, a chunk of data from you, and then they're going to need to understand how to interpret it. There's not really a way in the system that I've seen yet that gives them the complete picture. But what you're doing is you're setting yourself up as an applicant, and, you know, giving them as much information as they can. They'll get in touch with you if they need to, you know, understand more about what your exact situation is. We've got one who's an independent contractor right now, but he's also taking a part-time job on payroll during this time. So we're kind of curious to see how like those kinds of, you know, much more gray area scenarios are going to play out in the coming weeks. And, you know, like I said, right now this program is 2.5 days old. So there's going to be a lot of, I think we're going to see more guidance coming out at ESD by the end of the week on things that they'd like to, you know, see more. They may go back through and edit the interface to add more questions, or drill down on some questions, or, you know, give you sort of a better choose your own adventure kind of way, depending on how you answer the questions, so that they can get to approving your application quicker and better. There's so much in unemployment right now. The big thing right now is that they're increasing staff within their calling centers, and they have the secondary helpline if you just have general questions about unemployment, so you don't have to clog the claims line. Once they get you approved, you'll get your $600 from the CARES Act, and then you're also going to get the minimum benefit amount, which is $235 for full-time workers. On top of that, we haven't talked to any, you know, that's what they're saying. We haven't talked to anybody yet that's received it, because nobody's been able to receive that through this method. So right now we're sort of telling everybody, well, bank on the $600, and then if Washington State gives you more on top of that, then that'll be a good thing. But we're probably not going to know what the net effect of that is for about a week and a half until people start, you know, seeing the money deposited in their accounts. You know, there are so many updates on the website. I just encourage everybody to go there and look through it. It's very user friendly. Probably for 60 to 70% of the scenarios that we talk to people about, all that information is, you know, one click away. It seems daunting, but it's not. It's not going to be. It's not going to be that bad. If you've been on ESD before, oh god, it's like a reading an encyclopedia. It's not that bad. Let's see, a couple of questions. Did I mention? Yes. So when you're applying for unemployment as a independent this is all one group: independent contractor, sole proprietor, self-employed. This is the new just, you know, group of people that they're dealing with, and there's no difference between them other than they're not normal payroll employees. As far as ESD is concerned, you will, and once you apply, you will be denied the traditional unemployment benefits, and that's the screen you'll get to, the letter you'll receive, and that's okay because state law requires you to be denied for normal benefits under normal rules, so that then you can advance to the emergency rules stage of this game. So that's where the $600 a week pandemic payment comes from. That's where the minimum from Washington State comes from, and you'll be able to, you know, that's when you'll advance into the next round of this. So don't be alarmed. This is just how ESD has to operate. But you know, at the end of the day, you'll be seeing those payments. It may take a little bit longer than like your normal payroll employees are seeing them because, you know, they're already in the system. So all ESD has to do is link up their account information with their claim, and they get paid. We're all going to take a little bit longer, just so they can get our information correctly input and get our benefits paid properly. Sorry, I'm going to go back into the chat. There's a couple more questions. So if you have not filed, you haven't filed your taxes yet for 2019.
John,
Oh,
can we read the question out loud first?
Yeah, I'm doing that. I haven't filed my 2019 taxes yet, contractor, self-employed. What documentation do I provide to establish income base? You know, if you everybody's going to be different in this regard. You know, it's if you can do your 2019 taxes, it wouldn't be a bad thing, but you're going to have to establish some sort of wage income stream. Your business checking account may be one of those things that you'll be able to provide. I know as you get deeper into the system, and I haven't seen the screen yet, we don't have screen grabs of the process from ESD, so it'd be easier if, you know, we could post like a walkthrough video of this so everybody could, you know, see what this is, but we don't have that. It's been one of those things we've asked about just because I've personally been going through it and, you know, getting locked out because I get to a new screen and it's like, oh, wow, this is like something I wasn't really prepared to answer. And, you know, then I run downstairs, grab my driver's license, come back up and kicked out again. So, you know, there are, as far as income verification goes, I think I know they said, you know, W-2s, 1099s. If you have your 2019 taxes done, that gives them the clearest picture. And if, you know, barring anything else, you know, it'll probably come down to your business checking account statement, you know, so that they can you can at least show them some sort of, you know, accounts receivable and payables going out in terms of your business salary. They seem to be looking back right now into the fourth quarter of 2018. I know the benefits calendar. There are two different benefits calendars that I've seen on the ESD website. One of them suggested if you're applying in April, they would start looking back at January 1st, 2019. The other one was be looking at April 1st, 2019. But when I went onto it, it asked to go back to October 1st, 2018. So that's one thing to be aware of if you're building an income profile for them and they start looking at quarters back. Seems like that's going a little bit farther back than they do with traditional employees, but you know, this is what we've got to do. There are webinars on the ESD website. There are that you can take a look at. There are the checklists of, you know, the things that you should have together before you try to apply. Just again, because these windows will time out quickly and you're just going to have to keep refreshing to get back into the system. Got a couple more questions. A couple filing jointly as a sole proprietor. Do I file as two individuals or one? And how do I provide documentation? I think that's a tax.
John, if I can jump in,
yeah, Chris, thanks.
So this was a this was a couple that they made actually enough income so that they're maxed out. You know, an individual would max out on their benefits, but there were a couple filing jointly, so they could both max out on their benefits if they could both file as individuals rather than as one entity and one person for the business. And there didn't seem to be a mechanism to do that. Are you aware of that? That would seem to be a pretty common situation, I think.
You mean well, the couple is. You're talking about using you're talking about using their 1040 or their Schedule C as the income verification.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, there's none of these scenarios are going to be as clean as, you know, just being able to turn in W-2s. So they're going to have to basically build up a narrative. And again, it's kind of, because I haven't seen all the screens yet that, you know, you have to go through. It's difficult to be able to say how, you know, what number you're going to put in there. You're going to have, each individual is going to have to say what, you know, show what their quarterly income was, let's say, over the last 5 quarters. And, you know, if they're a couple, they're still individually making income. You know, they're still, and this is probably a, you know, much deeper conversation with the household than anything else. But, you know, if they're both working for the business, then they're both making income, you know, and they're going to have to apportion out how much of the income goes to each of them, and then submit the joint return as, you know, basically saying, well, you know, my income plus her income, you know, added up to, you know, what you see in the joint. And they may, you know, ESD is probably going to follow up and have questions, and, you know, how as much bookkeeping as, you know, folks have available to discuss these things with them, it'll move things more smoothly along. You know, it's again, these are all of our situations are going to have some gray area involved, and that's what they're anticipating. That's why the system took so long to update, and it will probably lead to some delays in, you know, folks getting their benefits, but you know, it's better than the alternative.
Yeah, a little black humor I noticed yesterday is, you know, there's a checklist, PDF checklist with lots of big X's and check boxes, and
yeah,
there's a list of 15 questions a couple of days ago. And then they cut out one question at the top, but at the bottom it still says that if you can say yes for questions 1 through 14 and yes for question 15, then you're eligible. But there's no question 15 anymore.
Oh, well. That's what happens when you have people working 24/7, you know, so somebody's not going to change the PDF. But let's see, what else? We got some other questions here. Let me just scroll back and make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, we got denied. Sole proprietor. Need to speak to someone. Can I contact you? Oh, okay. Let's see. Can I apply for UI while our income is closed? You can apply at, yes. So, hey, Mick, Chris, this will dovetail into you. But the last question: can I apply for UI while our income is closed and I get a PPP? Am I still eligible for PPP if I return to work and bring my employees back? I think the answer is yes, because right now, you know, this week, and possibly going back to as early as March 29th, your business may have been closed. PPP, so, you know, if your business opened up, so you got approved for PPP on Monday, you know, for example. Yeah, and it's, PPP is considered an alternative to unemployment, basically. You know, if you can keep your employees on payroll for 8 weeks, you know, and whatever the 8-week period is, it happens after, it starts at, you know, the day you get funded, and it ends, you know, no later than June 30th. At this point, if you got funding next week for PPP, it would be 8 weeks. It would be May 1st through June 30th, basically. So, so you would bring your employees back for those 8 weeks, and as long as 75% of your PPP is those payroll and payroll benefit costs, then technically your loan should be forgiven. And we should point out that SBA has not provided guidance on forgiveness yet, Chris. So, you know, we're assuming the best here. Obviously the guidance when that comes out, we'll be updating everybody on that. So that means you can claim, you claim unemployment from as early as March 29th through the end of the end of this week, the end of next week. Eventually, yes, double dipping, people that are interested, wanting to do that will come back to bite people later. It's not going to happen right away because the verification systems between SBA and ESD, I don't think that's a line that exists yet, but I'm sure that Washington State will be setting up some sort of investigative thing, especially once it comes down to PPP loans going the forgiveness phase, because that's when the audits happen. And then the audits happen on PPP loans. If you're applying for forgiveness, you will need to reconcile all the money that you were loaned with your SBA lender, and then they will they'll petition to
if I could jump in,
yeah, go ahead.
Where I think reality might conflict with what might be a optimal spreadsheet answer. So the optimal spreadsheet answer is exactly what you say. Have you people on unemployment till you get actually get the PP loan. You've got 8 weeks from there to bring them back. You want to do that as a business because you get another 33% kicker on top of your wages to apply to rent and mortgage. But think about the experience for your employees. And the fact that if they're low-wage employees making less than $60,000 a year, they'll actually make less money coming back on your payroll than if they just stay on unemployment. So they may not want to do that. So there's those kind of nuances that you'll find when you get into the thick of it.
Sure, and that's one of those things where you can go into shared work at that point as an employer, and and your employees can kind of split everybody's going to be different in terms of how much money they're making, but you can employees can be say shared work standby. You can basically keep your employees, pay them up to cut their hours, bring them in for stuff, or just pay them to have them on, and they can make up the difference on UI. That is a much longer conversation, but these are things that are easily found on the ESD website.
Quick note about the PPP. So unless you're paying yourself as an employee of the business, you can't use PPP funds, forgivable PPP funds, to pay yourself, because that has to be for employees. And you would need to bring people, if you want the full forgiveness, you need to bring the same number of people as the people that you put in your application for the employed number from the previous year. So I think that kind of colors, like you can't, if you're not an employee of the corporation or the business entity, you cannot use PPP to pay yourself. So you might get.
I've heard a different answer from the SBA that.
Have you? Okay, good to know.
That they'll look at your Schedule C line 31 income as your base for the business, and that would
good
be
to know.
And they're looking at how to look at Schedule E, but they have not provided guidance on that yet.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, because PPP was always intended to include independent contractors and self-employed. So if you couldn't pay yourself, you'd be, that would be poor guidance on their part. Mary, Mickey brought a point, and I've had this on a couple of calls yesterday. I know guys were getting out of unemployment and dipping into PPP. Just that, if you do get funded for PPP, and you are going to go with a forgiveness plan, which means you're going to have to, have your paperwork audited by your SBA lender. The best thing to do is to set up a separate business account and put all that money goes in there, and that way you have a very clean paper trail for that. If you start blending the funds, it's going to get messier. And again, if you intend to ask for the loan forgiveness, it'll be easier to punch holes in your story if you've blended the money into your normal operations fund. So just the best bit of guidance there that we can give. And sorry, so Jen J's got her hand up there. Mickey.
I have a question about on unemployment. Our business is very cyclical, and one of our employees will be going on unemployment. And April would be, I mean, 10 to 12-hour days typically, where March, 10 hours maybe.
Right.
So how does that, January, February, March, I think he's probably got 57 hours in those 3 months combined, but in April, May, June, he would have over 200 hours per month.
Right. So you can, this is there. So there's shared work and partial employment. Partial employment sounds more like your situation. You're operating on a less than full-time basis, and you can request from ESD status known as partial free employees, and their work search while they're collecting unemployment is waived if they were hired to work full-time, they return at least 1 week of full-time employment within a 4-month period, and they have to work at least 16 hours a week. Does any of that fit with your situation, or this is wildly off base?
No, they don't work. It depends, but typically January, February, March, they don't pull 16 hours a week.
Right.
If you average it through the year, of course they do, because they have
Right,
those huge months.
But they're not going to apply for unemployment until this week, next week, right?
Well, they should have applied. I don't know, but they should have applied at the beginning of the month because we've been shut down.
Okay.
And this would be a 200-hour month for them at least.
No, I understand. So it's what they'll need to do. I mean, basically, they should just go in and apply at this point, and they can, because they were working part-time, at least, since March 29th. If they go back further than March 29th, they can certainly apply for that. They'll probably have a phone call from ESD to talk about their situation if they were working only, 10 hours a week, starting March 1st, say. But, and so that they can understand how that works. We haven't really had too many conversations with them about seasonal work, how that looks when you're applying. But you can, if they need to, I think it's weird because you're not really going to be a partial. There's two things that can happen. One is, well, they should apply anyway. And you'll probably get letters from, ESD just, showing the progression of the claim. It might be worth it to you to call. There is an employer phone number that you can call just to, because if you have to set yourself up as a partial employer, or if you're doing shared work, none of this sounds like what you're doing. So it's kind of like they just work, part-time. Then they could direct you better in terms of if you need to do anything as the employer, or if it's just going to be the employee saying, look, my hours are cut and, I'm just applying. They can, try to go back, as early as they can. The minimum they would get, assuming they were, working less than full-time, starting March 29th, would be the $600 a week. It sounds like they probably get the minimum state because they are, because they'll have a wage history being paid as employees. So
does the state go back and look at last year? I mean, with comparing April of 2019, or
no,
the history of what it is.
Well, in terms of the employee work history, or in terms of the employer?
In terms of the employee, I mean, he's been with us for several years, and this pattern is consistent.
Right. Well, the employee is going to, if your employee is paid through payroll, which I'm assuming, then ESD is already going to have their wage history on file, because because they're pulling payroll data as through the years as you're paying the employee. So all they're doing is filing a claim basically against that. They're not going to look at it and say, well, you worked more in April last year than you did this year. Everybody's in that boat right now. The idea is to get them into the emergency rules where they are eligible to at least receive the pandemic $600 a week, and at least be able to, get at least the minimum out of the state, which is the $235. And then, depending on how their wages stacked up over the year, they may well be eligible for more of the state aid, which goes up to $790 a week, I think. So, on top of the 600. So this could be, this could definitely be a lifesaver for your employee.
Thank you.
So, okay.
Sorry,
I know we have to wrap it up. I can be, oh yeah.
There's a few questions in chat. I think Jamie was already leaving, but Annie Lister had a question that sounded like it was for him. If at the same time, I'm not sure if he's still on.
Is this the one about the guidelines?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm still on, but we've got a meeting with a regional meeting with legislators on the same topics. So I think this is a great idea, and I was just writing it down to make sure I followed up on it. Because I think it'd be great. I think the local businesses need it as much, and this is a good idea to have something for tourists and maybe visitors bureau could help out, making sure the message gets out.
And in terms of unemployment, there was a question from Krista Campbell and a question from Natalie Wilson, and they can unmute themselves if they want to ask their questions themselves.
Thank you. Have a good day.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, Jamie.
Well, Krista's, I think I did. You're denied for normal benefits. Are you automatically advanced to the new system? No, you are. Once you're denied benefits, then they move you into emergency. You don't have to do anything at that point, other than respond to the correspondence that'll be coming to you, and answer the phone if they call. My employee applied for a UI in the beginning of March, just before the governor's stay home. I plan to hire her back when we reopen. How long is she eligible? She's eligible for the normal amount of weeks, which it's out to 39 weeks basically. As it's the base weeks, which is 26 weeks plus the 13 emergency weeks on top of that. So so that'll be 39 weeks through the state. The next 16 weeks or 15 weeks through the CARES Act for the $600 additional per week. So there'll be something touch and go that happens after July 25th in terms of their benefits being reduced. Not to say that they're not going to extend that $600 if this rolls past July. I think the hope is that it's not going to happen, but it's too early to say right now. Let's see what else we've got. I think that's it, right? The employee's wage base can be the best 2 quarters in the last 6. Yes, it can be. Sorry, that's if you're that's the self-employed questionnaire, but yes, that's what I said.
Can you read out the question?
Yeah, it says the employee's wage base can be the best 2 quarters in the last 6. I think it's the last 5, but yes, that's correct. Again, for self-employed and independent contractors. I don't think we're talking about the payroll employees. Okay.
Thanks, John. That was really amazing information, and we will put this recording onto our website. So if there's anything that you missed, be sure to check our website, sanjuansedc.org. Also, John is available via email. So just send our info@sanjuansedc.org email address, a message if you have any questions for him, and he'll get back to you. I wanted to just go back to Natalie Wilson's comment about the PPP. She wondered if she was still eligible for the PPP if she returned to work and brought her employees back. The PPP is designed actually to pay people who aren't working. So you don't have to bring your employees back for those PPP benefits to get paid to them. So I wanted to clarify that. Chris Reed, if you've got anything else, has Chris confirmed this with me? If Chris has got any other little wrinkles on that, maybe.
No, that's correct. There's no obligation to have them actually do any real work, but to build your forgiveness base, once you get the PPP loan, you'd need to have them on your payroll, not on unemployment. And again, the benefit of that to you is that you can get those additional 33% dollars toward rent, mortgage interest, and utilities.
Is it 33% or 25%?
Well, 25% of the total, which is 33% more than your than the wage.
Yes. Okay, good. I understand. Okay, thanks.
And that also keeps them on health insurance if you're paying their health benefits too. Those are that. And Chris, I think I've got this right. Any of the payroll benefits like health insurance, pension, that kind of thing are part of the 75%, right?
I believe so. Some of the programs treat them like FICA's included and not included in a way. I don't know all of those ins and outs. But I also like one final question is that if all else fails, there's still one, I think, very powerful program that's not as attractive as the others, but universally available, and that's the employee retention tax credit. So that you can, everyone who has employees is eligible for this. And if you don't get PPP or the others, you can basically go to the IRS side and have your accountant basically, look at the rules where you basically get half of what you pay in payroll during Q2 back in the form of forgiven payroll taxes that you don't have to pay, with your 941s and or get as a refundable tax credit with next year's taxes. So that's kind of the last stopgap, is you can get half of your employees' wages back in terms of this tax credit.
We had one more question. If the employees don't come back at the end of the PPP's 8 weeks, does a new employee count? And yes, absolutely. It doesn't have to be the same BODs. It just has to be BODs. And actually, if there's not employment after that, I don't believe there's a requirement to hire people back. Is that true, Chris?
Not to my knowledge. There is a little ambiguity that the rules aren't crystal clear about whether the reference base for PPP is a full-time equivalents or dollars. I think dollars is more likely, but there has been debate in the accountants which one it is, and the guidance has not been clarified.
Yeah.
I heard it was number of heads on full-time employees
FTEs, yes.
yesterday, but that's, again, the forgiveness guidance is still TBD.
Yes.
Yeah. But my people aren't full-time. You see, that's the problem. But the thing is, we're not full-time. They're not going to be working as many hours. I think I was unmuted.
Natalie, was that a question for the group, or were you?
Oh, no.
Okay, sorry. I'm going to mute you.
Sorry, I was just wondering. So we're seasonal, so my employees aren't, like I had like 7 employees last summer, but we're not going to obviously be open as many hours or have as many employees.
Right.
So I'm just wondering how that's going to, because a lot of my employees are also students, and they're not necessarily considered whatever the criteria of how many hours a full-time employee is.
Yes. So whatever you've paid or whatever you've put onto your PPP application for the number of employees, that's the number of employees that you need to pay with your PPP funds. Otherwise, it gets reduced in terms of how much you can forgive. So for small businesses, it's a mysterious place to be, because you wouldn't have had that many people right now.
And so it doesn't matter whether they're part-time employees, but it's a number of people on my payroll.
Yes, so the number has to match whatever you put onto your PPP app for the number of employees during the period that you're claiming for the PPP. It needs to be the same that you pay with those PPP funds. And then there's no requirement, from what we understand from the SBA, there's no requirement after those 8 weeks of PPP covered payroll. There's no requirement to rehire necessarily anybody.
There is a point in fine detail here, is that you can choose what your wage-based period is.
Yes.
Either January 1st through, I think it's February 15th of this year, or February 15th through June 30th of last year. So if you're a seasonal business, you clearly want to take the last example.
Yes. Thanks, Chris.
But then she's got to, if she doesn't bring all those employees back, that she, say she's, got 20 employees for the larger seasonal push, but she's really can only, she can only maybe bring back, half of that because everybody else is, nobody's
Yes.
here yet. So what can happen there is if you can bring it back as many people as you can, what Chris is saying is, is the same thing. It's, your forgiveness portion will get reduced. But if you say you get the amount for the 20 people and you're only going to end up paying 10 people, you can return the portion for the other 10 people that you didn't bring back without a prepayment penalty. Or worst case scenario, and it doesn't get brought up enough, is that this is a 1% interest loan that you can take out for 2 years, and you don't have to worry about forgiveness.
Right.
So it doesn't get much cheaper than 1% in this day and age. So you depending on how your operations look, and you can hold on to this money if you're really worried about the rest of the year, and just it'll just be a loan. So that's that is an option. You don't have to you don't have to struggle with a worker thing if you truly believe that you can't make it work. So
great. Well, it's getting a little bit over time, so I'm going to abridge our meeting. But thank you, John. Thank you, Chris. And thank you for Jamie, who just left, for joining us. Everybody who came today, thank you for joining us. As I said before, if you need anything for your business, you can reach out to us and we'll do the best we can to get you hooked up with resources or information. And again, sanjuansedc.org has all the information on how to contact us. Thank you, everybody, for coming today.